Hi everybody, Steven here. So we're finishing our build of the Site Recovery Manager, or also known as VMware Live Site Recovery. And the last thing we need to do is create these things called recovery plans. So if you want to learn more about that, stick around. See you in a bit. All right, thanks for sticking around. So why don't we get to it? This shouldn't be too long of a video. Creating these recovery plans are actually pretty simple, but I'll point out a few things you need to know, all right? Now, before I continue on, I always like to throw this out at this point. If this is the kind of stuff that you like, please support the channel by subscribing to it. Also, liking helps out a lot. It helps out with the YouTube analytics. Remember, without subscribers, there's no content developers, all right? So it would really help me out, and it's free. Just click on that button, right? Simple, simple. Another way to support the channel is sharing it, all that kind of stuff. But also, I do have super thanks enabled. So, and for those of you that have given super thanks, 10 thumbs up to you folks. Really appreciate it. Any subscribers, anybody watching, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Why don't we jump to it, okay? All right, everybody. So let's get started here. So in my environment, I've got my Site A, which is my protected site, and I got my Site B, which is my recovery site. So you'll see I've got some workloads running here in Site A. This is my Site A vCenter server. You can see at the top, VCSA01. And you'll see that I've got some VMs, Retail 1, Retail 2. Just ignore Retail 2. You'll see I've got app, database, and web VMs. Great. Here's my Site B. If I go to here, oops, yep. There's my Site B. And you'll see I got some placeholder VMs and stuff. But my workloads right now are all running in Site A. Let's fire up Site Recovery Manager. Let's go into the main menu. Let's go into Site Recovery. And I always like to wait for this little progress thing to finish, just in case there's any issues. You know, there we go. I'll go open. And then at that point, I'll click on View Details. And now at that point here, I can click on Replications. And I should, right now I'm protecting the VMs on Site A, and they're going to Site B. So you see the replications going from Site A, SA, that's Site A, VCSA01, to Site B, VCSA01. And you'll see here's my VMs that are being replicated, okay? Again, that's using vSphere replication. I also have my Retail 1 using hardware replication based on that Unity appliance. If you watched my previous video on protection groups, I talked about it, so you'll want to watch that. Let's click on protection groups. Again, you'll see that I've got 3 protection groups here, okay? I got my app database and my workload 1. My app database, if I click on it, you'll see I've got 2 VMs there, app and database VM. If I go to my workload 1, you'll see again I've got 2 VMs there, web 1 and web 2. So let's go back to here. So app and workload 1 are based on, notice it says protection type, individual VMs. I'm using vSphere replication there. And I demoed that again just in my previous video. And I just did this just to show you could do it. There's no rememorize, or anyways. Then you'll see over here, Realty 1 is based on data store groups. So I'm protecting, I've got a data store or a volume that's being replicated via hardware. Again, it's software underneath the covers. Who cares? It's my lab environment. And so this one here is protecting a data store. And whatever VMs are on that data store, it automatically protects, okay? So if I click on this, you'll actually see there's 1 VM there, Retail 1, okay? I could have had more or whatever. So I'm going to create a recovery plan. Let's click on New Recovery Plan. I'm going to call it whatever, my recovery plan, right? You want to name it something that makes sense, like this is my SAP workload, this is my SQL Server, Exchange, whatever, workload 1, whatever type of thing, right? So you want to name that. And I'm going to click Next. Now here, this is where you select your protection groups. Now, I am doing a combination of software, vSphere replication, and hardware replication, okay, using the Unity appliance. And I know it's software, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So I've got a mixture. So you may be in the real world and you have that. You might have some VMs, lower priority VMs, using vSphere replication, using asynchronous, and then you may have some high priority stuff, mission critical stuff, using hardware-based replication, using synchronous replication. And you can put them all inside the same recovery plan, okay? Now, one thing I'm going to mention here, is it a good idea to have all your protection groups inside one recovery plan, like, and having like quote unquote a master recovery plan. Let's hit that button and have 1,000 VMs fail over. Probably not a good idea, because you might get into like broadcast storms or power on storms and all this type. Boot storms is the word I'm looking for. So now you got 1,000 VMs powering up. It may not be a good idea. So you may want to pick and choose. Okay, we're going to have this set of machines start up, these set, that sort of thing. In my example here, I'm just going to pick all just to show it to you. I'm going to hit next. Test networks. Again, you can actually run a test on your recovery plans. Now, in that case, what it uses is snapshot technologies, and it's going to start up your VM on the recovery site and connect it to a test network. I talked about this in inventory mapping. All right. You can say use site level mapping. So if you set that up in your inventory mapping, I'll do a test recovery plan a little bit later. You can say use the default, which I've got set up just to set up to connect it to an internal switch. Or you could change it and say, no, I want this one connecting to this test port group on this distributed switch or whatever. I'll talk about that one when I do a test recovery plan for you. I'm going to click next. Gives me a summary. I go finish. Easy peasy, and it's done. It's that simple. Okay, a few clicks, you got a recovery plan. I'm going to click on the recovery plan here, and then I can see the summary. Okay, I can see some of the VMs that are protected by that. I can see the protection groups. There's permissions. There's history. I got nothing going on here. And if there's any issues, I'm going to click on recovery steps, and notice. Let me get rid of this here. Notice there's a bunch of different steps. Notice the first step here: synchronize storage, protection workload 1 app. So it's going to synchronize the storage. Basically, it's going to make sure everything's been updated at the recovery site. Now, some of these steps, depend on what you run, may not occur. Like, for example, in a forced recovery, which I'll show you, this synchronized storage step is skipped. You won't see it there. Okay. You'll see recover site host from standby. Again, if there's any host over at the recovery site that are standby, suspend non. So you'll see there's a list of steps that it's going to take here. Now, I also want to show you here. You got power on priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, priority 4, and priority 5 VMs. If I open this up, you'll see everything goes into priority 3. So you can modify the priorities of VMs, and the default is priority 3. And then if you expand this even more, when you look at your VMs over here, guest startup, customize the IP. You can actually customize the IPs if you want. Guest shutdown, power on machine. So there's a lot of different steps that you can do in here. If I click on virtual machines here, and let's pick, let's expand, let's click on, I don't want to click on it. Let's go to, let's expand. Oh. Sorry about that. Configure recovery. Yeah. So I selected that. Actually, let's select it again. So you'll see over here, it actually shows me some of the information about it, dependencies and stuff. So right now, this VM, or all mine, are in priority 3. Maybe I go, no, I don't want that. I want to configure the recovery. When I do that, I can specify the priority of this VM. I want to give this one the highest. Now, pick and choose your battles here. Don't say, oh, they're all going to be highest. No, you don't want to do that, okay? You want to pick and choose your battles so you don't have these boot storms, okay? So you can modify the priorities of them, okay? You can also specify VM dependencies. So I could say view dependency, view all. Now, remember, right now, all mine are in the same group, priority 3. That means they're all going to start up at pretty much in parallel at the same time. You can create dependencies of a VM. Say, oh, no, this VM depends on this VM inside the same group. It cannot have a dependency of a VM in a different group. It will be ignored. So it has to be within the same group. So you can't control the startup sequence of your VMs within that priority group. Okay? I don't care about that. I'm going to scroll down. Let's scroll down. Shutdown actions. Shutdown guests before power. Shutdown guests before power off requires VMware tools. So if there's no VMware tools, it's going to have a hard time powering off the VMs. Startup action, power on. That makes sense. Maybe you don't want to power on this one for whatever reason. You could do that. VMware tools. Wait for VMware tools. This is how we know it was successfully powered on. This is how long it's going to wait. If you don't have VMware tools installed inside your VM, and this is selected, it'll give you an error saying, hey, you know what? Like it'll power on the VM, but the recovery plan will say there's an error here that you need to resolve. Okay, you can actually add in additional delays, pre-power on steps, running batch files or stuff like that. So you can modify these settings on an individual VM. IP customization, I talked about this in network mappings. You can actually go in and do it on a per VM basis as well. So if you want to manually customize the IP address of your NIC, so this VM's IP on site A has to be this IP, on site B it has to be that one. So you can be more specific here. And I did give you folks an example of that on network mapping. I'm going to cancel this. So this is some of the stuff that you could actually do. So let's go back to the summary here. Actually, let's go to recovery steps. Now, notice I've got a couple options. I've got an option here. I've got test, and I got run. Okay, let's talk about test later. Let's look at run. So let's run this recovery plan. I'm going to click on run. Now, notice it comes up here, big red marker. Run this plan. Mode will attempt to shut down the VMs, the protected site, recover them in the recovery site. So it shows me what the protected site is, what the recovery site is. Everything seems to be connected, and this is going to affect 5 VMs. Notice if I click on next, it comes up and says, confirm that you understand that this is going to permanently alter the VMs. So again, it's saying, I'm waiting for this. So you're clicking this saying, I understand that this process will permanently alter the VMs and infrastructure of both the protected and recovery site. So VMware's kind of covering their butt here. Now, what kind of recovery do you want? Do you want to do a planned migration? That would be an example of, hey, there's a storm coming in here. It may hit our data center. Let's move our workloads out of the way. And what planned will do, it will do a graceful shutdown of all the VMs on your primary site or on your protected site, synchronize all the storage, and then move them across. That's the very polite way of doing things, and that's what you want to do all the time, okay? What's disaster recovery? Disaster recovery basically says, my site, something's wrong with my primary site or my protected site. Notice it says it will attempt to replicate changes to the recovery, but otherwise most recent storage synchronization data. So what they're saying here, the disaster recovery is saying something's wrong with my primary site. I'm going to attempt to shut down the VMs. I'm going to attempt to synchronize storage, all that before I power it on the recovery site. That's kind of like, hey, we're going to do our best, but those steps may fail, so it may take longer. Suppose if your primary site is not there. It got hit by a meteorite. Boom, it's under, bunch of rubble. It's gone. It ain't coming back, right? So what do you do then? You don't want to wait for this thing to do shutdowns. I'm going to cancel this. Now watch this. I'm going to go into my site recovery here. Under advanced settings, scroll down, recovery. Now you can do this for site A and site B. You'd probably do it for both. I'm going to go to edit. And notice here, force recovery. I'm going to enable that. Let's say okay. All right, so I just enabled that. Let's go back to my recovery plans. Let's select that recovery plan. Let's do the run again. Notice here, understand. Oh, shoot. Probably just didn't get a chance to update that. Let's give it a few seconds. I don't think I have to do it at both sites. Just the one site should be enough. Run. Understand. Okay. Let's try both sites. It may take a few minutes to update, to be honest with you. Let's go site pair, advanced settings, recovery. Let's go to site B, edit, force recovery, say okay. It was success. All right. Watch it make a liar out of me. Now let's go back to recovery plans. Let's pick this and run. There we go. Maybe you have to do it at both. Or you know what? It could have been just a delay. Notice over here. So remember I said planned is the nice way. Hey, let's try to shut things down. Let's shut things down, move things across. That's the nice way. Disaster recovery, say, hey, we're going to try and shut things down, but we're going to try and synchronize things, but no guarantee, right? Forced recovery. Notice again, there's that option here. Forced recovery says my protected site's gone. Don't even bother trying to shut down VMs over there. Don't even bother trying to synchronize storage. Just power on VMs at the recovery site. That's it. Skip all that other stuff. Now, again, that's kind of the really rude way of doing things, folks, and you really don't want to select that unless your building's under 1,000,000 piles of water or something like that, right? You know that site's gone and ain't coming back, right? So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go plan migration. I'm going to select I understand. I'm going to go next. There we go. I'm going to go finish. And it's now running the recovery plan. So I'll click on recovery steps, and you actually see, let me just kind of modify my resolution here. You can see over here it's running the pre-synchronize. You can expand these. And by the way, as this is going through, all this stuff is logged and it's stored, I think, for 7 days. And this is something that you may want to keep, all right? For example, you might be in an environment. Now, I haven't talked about testing the recovery plan. Well, I'll show you that a little bit later. But you may want to keep these reports because you may have to show your boss once a month. Oh, yeah, we did a test and everything worked fine, and you'd have to show this. Or maybe your boss or some kind of organization you may have to, right? So over here you see preparing the VMs, the migration, protect group. Now, one of the things, while this is running, I'm kind of babbling on, the plan migration, I said it's going to shut down the VMs, synchronize storage, and then power them on at the other site. And that's what it's doing, right? There's an exception to that. Again, if you watch the very first video, What Site Recovery Manager, I talked about stretch storage. So I could actually have, depending on your environment, and if you get the deep pockets, your protected site and recovery site might actually have stretched storage between them, so which is read-writable at both locations. Right now, I've got a LUN at one location, which is read-write, and a LUN at the other location, which is not read-write. During this whole process, the storage replication adapter is going out for my hardware and saying, hey, make that read-writable, and the other one just, non-read-writable. So in this case, if you had stretched storage across, all right, and I'm not talking vSAN, okay, folks? If you had stretched storage across, it would not shut down. A plan migration would say, oh, vMotion it across. So if you got the deep pockets, a plan migration could be really, really fast. But you got to have a storage subsystem that's capable of having that read-write storage across both environments, which personally, I've never played with one that does that, but it would be pretty expensive. So again, this thing's going through. We see over here it's powering on VMs. Remember, if you don't have VMware tools installed, how does it know it's powered on? Well, it's waiting for VMware tools to start up, okay? Again, I showed you that in the settings. You can disable that if you want to, right? So it's going through this. We'll just give it a few more minutes, and I'll probably just speed this up. Okay, so we can see that the recovery is complete. Let's look over here in Site A. You actually see the retail is powered off. You see web is powered off and database is powered off. Same thing with app. Again, these are placeholder VMs. If I go to Site B now, you'll see that the VMs are running over in Site B. Okay? So we successfully failed over. However, there's a problem. Let's go back to Site Recovery Manager. Let's look at the summary of our recovery. It says, your workloads are not protected. Run Reprotect. And you actually see this little thing at the top here, right? What is Reprotect? So great. Remember, I had my VMs on Site A, and they were being mirrored to Site B using vSphere replication software and using the Unity, the Dell EMC Unity hardware replication. I'll just leave it at that. Okay? Great. So now I moved all the VMs, failed them over to Site B. Well, what's happening? Great, they're running on Site B, but they're no longer being protected. They're not. The mirroring didn't reverse. You got to do that. So let's go into here and say, actually, let me show you something. Let's go into replications here, and you'll see from Site A to Site B, it says recovered. That's it. If I go incoming from Site B to Site A, there's nothing coming in. That's the vSphere replication I'm showing you here, right? So there's nothing coming in. Let's go back into Site Recovery Manager, and let's click on our recovery plan, and you'll see there's a Reprotect option. You will not get this Reprotect option if there was a failure in your recovery plan. So let's click on Reprotect. I'll say, I understand. I'll go next. And while it's doing its thing, I'll talk. Let's look at the recovery steps. So right now, it's actually reversing the direction. Now, this Reprotect will not be an option to select. If you ran your recovery plan and it failed, you'll need to fix whatever was wrong because the Reprotect will not be enabled, okay? An example would be if you had a VM that you failed over that did not have VMware tools. Remember I showed you in the settings of the VM, I said, oh, when you turn on the VM, it's going to wait for 5 minutes to see if it sees VMware tools. If there's no VMware tools, it's going to say, oh, there's something wrong with that VM. It didn't power on, even though it is on. So you'd have to go into that VM and disable that, okay? So if a recovery plan fails, you got to figure out and fix the problem before a Reprotect is enabled. So mine was enabled, so we failed over, we Reprotect, and this is doing its thing. Oh, the other thing it's doing, like I said, it's reversing the direction of the vSphere replication. So it's saying, hey, site B now replicate to site A. Great. What's it do with your storage array, your physical storage array? Remember, we installed the storage replication adapter. Site Recovery Manager will say, hey, storage, via the storage replication adapter, hey, storage, you need to reverse your mirroring, okay? So we want to be aware of that. So we'll see now. Look, if I go to replications now, if I refresh, let's go, oh, I don't want that, sorry. Let's cancel that. Let's go to incoming. Sorry, incoming there. You'll see, yep, we got it. This is site A, site B to site A. So everything's still on site B, all right? So let's go back to site B. See, everything's still running there. Maybe I want to move things back. So there's no fail back, it's like automatic fail back. There's none of that. You got to press buttons to do this stuff. So let's fail back. So let's go back to my recovery plans. I'll select my recovery plan. I'm going to select run. I'm going to say, okay, I understand, whatever I'm going to do. Plan migration. I'll go next. By the way, I'm not going to demo this one. It's kind of a waste. I can pick disaster recovery, and basically what it does, it tries to shut. It's the same thing, but it will try to shut things down. If it can't shut things down, it just continues on. Okay? Whereas a plan migration, it tries to shut things down. If it fails, it stops right there. Remember, plan migration is the polite way of doing things. So I'm not going to demo this one. Forced recovery, if you select that, it said don't even shut down, just fail over. Okay? Let me just do this to get everything back. Now, if I go back to my recovery steps. So that forced migration basically says, hey, that site is gone. Just turn on the VMs. Now, what does that mean? And you got to really think about this. What does that mean? Let's say I had a computer that's running here, okay, at my house. Here's my computer. It's running. All of a sudden, a meteorite comes down and hits my house. Well, that computer is not running anymore. It's just like me unplugging the power cord from it, right? Now, imagine if I was mirroring that to a different location. If I was doing synchronous mirroring, which is available via hardware storage, an exact copy would be at that other location. So doing a forced migration basically says power on the VM over there. What does the state of that VM look like? Well, it looks like, the meteorite hit, and it looks like it wasn't shut down properly. So when the VM starts up over there, the VM's going to start up. The operating system inside it's going to say, hey, we weren't shut down properly. So there's a possibility you could lose data. If you ever unplug a machine and not shut it down properly, same kind of thing, doing a forced, okay? So you have to be aware of that. So you don't want to enable that option or select that option unless you've got absolutely no choice. And notice again, it's not enabled by default. You have to go in and do this, okay? So great, I'm just basically moving things back. Now, so I did ran my recovery plan, did a plan migration over to site B. Great, it was done. Then I did a Reprotect, so now it's mirroring back in the opposite direction. Great. Then I did a plan migration back to site A. So great, that's what it's doing right now. And then once that's done, guess what I got to do? I got to do a Reprotect, so it's reversing the mirroring as well. Okay, so I will just let this thing go for a bit. Okay, so we see here it's completed successfully. If I go back to site A, I got all my VMs running over here. And on site B, is that site B? Site B, they're not. That's just a placeholder. But what do I got to do here, folks? Again, notice again it says here, I get that little brown mark over there. If I go to Summary tab, it's telling me my workloads aren't protected. I need to reprotect. Let's click on that. I say understand. I go next. I go finish. And at that point, it's doing the reprotect. Let's let that run. And I got one more thing I'm going to actually do. We'll run a test recovery plan. And so, hey, while you're waiting, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, and this is the kind of stuff you like, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Without subscribers, there's no content developers. Also, hey, if you lasted this long, hit that like button for me too. Again, that helps out with the YouTube analytics. All this stuff helps out the content developers, all right? So anyways, let's let this run for a bit. Okay, so my reprotect finished. If I look at my recovery plan, looks like my protected site is site A. My recovery site is site B. Let's zoom in a bit on that. Okay, protected site, site A, recovery site, site B. Let's zoom out. Okay, and we should see all my workloads are all running inside A, and everything's again reprotected. And let's go back to site here. Let's go to replications, and we see we're going from site A to site B. Beautiful. All right. My storage, it's a different thing. I'd have to look at my storage, which this is not part of that. Right. Let's do one more thing. Recovery plan. Let's select the recovery plan. Let's do a test. Okay. Now, before I do a test, let me go to site B. And let's look at networking. So at site B networking, I know this, I'm personally not a big fan of the dark screen here. So I see site B data center, that's a port group management, and there's a distributed switch. So this is what my networking looks like on site B. Let's try this out. Let's go into, and if I actually, yeah, let's go back into here, Site Recovery Manager. Let's, now notice I got a test button here. Let's click on test. Now, this is a great part of Site Recovery Manager, testing these recovery plans. This builds confidence, right? You know, like so all of a sudden, you know, when disaster's coming in, you go, oh yeah, no problems. This is going to work. I just tested this stuff yesterday. It's going to fail over, no problems, right? This is great. And you should be running tests quite often. Once a year, to me, is way too little. Once a month minimum, as far as I'm concerned. But I'll leave that up to you guys, right? So test. Now notice over here, replicate recent changes to recovery site. So what that means is we're going to make sure everything's been synchronized between the protected site and the recovery site. A test means I'm going to leave my production VMs on site A alone. They're going to be running. They're not going to be impacted. On site B, the recovery site, I'm going to start up those VMs. What? I'm going to basically do a snapshot and start up the VMs at that recovery site. So you can go and test it and make sure it's working. Really, really cool, right? So you can use this to test, like, oh, I want to basically, you know, do a patch or something. You could do a test here, have the stuff running on site B, and then do your patches. And if everything works, great. You know, it's a kind of a cool way of doing things. Now, I'm going to leave this selected here if you have this option. But technically speaking, in a complete disaster, if I do this, I go next. Basically, it says I'm just going to start up the machines, what I've got to work with. So sometimes you may want to try it with this and without it. Okay, I'm going to leave it with it. I'm going to go next. I'm going to go finish. All right, let's look at the recovery steps here. Notice, okay, synchronized storage, because I selected that checkbox. It says synchronized storage. If I didn't do that, it wouldn't see this in the steps. Notice over here, making writable storage. Because I got a mixture of vSphere replication and hardware replication using the Dell Unity product. You may be using some other hardware, which is fine. Notice it says create writable storage snapshot. At my recovery site, there's a LUN over there that's being mirrored to. Well, it's going to make a kind of like a snapshot. Different vendors call it different things. I know in my IBM days we called it flash copy. I'm going to make a kind of a copy of that that's going to be read-writable. Okay, so that's kind of the idea, and we're going to use that for our VMs. That's with hardware replication. Notice over here it's powering on some VMs. Notice it's configured test networks. So it made some test networks. What the heck is going on there, right? And then it's powering on my priority 3 VMs. All right. So we'll just give this thing a few seconds to do its bit. Let me just back out the resolution so we can see everything here. Maybe we can go one step further. There we go. So we'll give this thing a few minutes to do its bit. Actually, yeah. There we go. It's done. We didn't even have to speed that up, folks. All right. So let's go back to Site A. All the VMs are running on Site A. Let's go to Site B. Is this Site B? No, that's not Site B. This is Site B. Let's... Oh, yeah. I'm looking at the wrong thing here. There's the VMs running over here. Hey, let's look at the network. Notice over here, there's this port group that was created. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to click on VMs, and you'll see all the VMs are connected to this. Now, this here, let's do a bit deeper digging. Let's select our host. Honestly, I don't like this dark mode. I'm going to switch my themes. I'm going to select my ESXi host. I'm going to click on virtual switches. I got my distributed switch. I got my standard switch. Okay, nothing new there. Actually, before I even do that, let's click back onto here. Here's this mysterious switch. If I click on hosts, this switch exists on host 2 and 3. So those VMs are running on 2 and 3, host 2 and 3. Let's go back to my cluster view, sorry. Let's go to host 2. You'll see, okay, here we go. Standard switch. Site Recovery Manager created this switch here. This is called an internal only switch, and it's got no physical adapters. And you see there's one VM on it, Web 2. If I go to host 3, here's that switch they created. And again, you'll see there's 4 VMs. That's the way it landed, okay? Again, so testing these VMs right now on host 3, app, database, and web 1 will be able to talk to each other because they're on the same host. But they will not be able to talk to host 2 because there's no uplink here. Because that's how I set things up. Now, you're probably not going to do that in the real world. When I did my network mapping, and I talked about that in inventory mapping video, I said create for a test network, create an internal switch. And that's okay if all the VMs are going to run on one host. You can do your quick tests, and that's fine. But in this example, I got multiple hosts, and those VMs landed on different hosts. So you'll probably, in the real world, maybe go on your port group, on your distributed switch, let's say, create a test port group for those test web, test database, test app, and have them on isolated VLANs, okay? And have your recovery plans use that. So I just wanted to show you that's what the test is. Now, let's go back to our recovery plan. So we're back at our recovery plan here. Now notice this cleanup. So you've done your test, everything's cool, everything's successful. I'm going to click on cleanup here, and it says, yeah, okay, gives you confirmation. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go next, next. And what it's doing now, it's going to go over to that recovery site where you had those VMs created, and it's going to wipe them all out. So running tests is a really, really good thing. Sorry, just check and make sure I'm recording. Running tests is a very good thing. Running them often is also a very good thing. Running them every 6 months, to me, just doesn't compute. Doesn't make sense. Unless, of course, there's no changes in your environment that's going on. But more tests that you run, the better. Builds that confidence, that sort of thing, okay? And there we go. We're done. Let's go back to Site B. This is Site B. Is this Site B? Let's refresh this. I changed the... There's Site B, yeah. Okay, there's Site B. You'll see the VMs are no longer running over there. Okay, so that's cool. That's what test is. Is there anything else I want to mention? I think that basically covers it. So, hey, folks, that's it for recovery plans. Maybe a little bit longer than I thought it would be, but I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps support the channel. Hit that thumbs up, the like button. I really appreciate it. Leave comments and questions down below on anything you want to see or me do. I might do a video setting up the Unity appliance in a lab environment for Site Recovery Manager. For those of you that might be interested in setting up a video like this, leave comments below if you're interested in me doing something like that. But that's it. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next one. Bye now.